third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there, and way second down,
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast on what would have been, I guess, our happiest episode, most positive episode. But because I'm alone, we're just going to run through it. Sean, traveling back from Arizona still, couldn't get anyone else to come on, short notice. So just going to go through what happened this weekend and look forward to the divisional round, which feels good to say that the Phillies are moving on. But they beat the Cardinals in two, like Sean and I both predicted, counting on Wheeler and Nola playing well, and they both did. Wheeler 6 1/3 scoreless, Nola 6 2/3 scoreless. So you're gonna win a lot of games when that happens. The offense, still wasn't pretty. I guess I think they scored the 9 runs in game one or they scored the 6 runs, in the ninth inning in game one. And it's just kind of like outside of that, it wasn't that pretty. They got a little lucky that Helsley blew up. I think part of that is the fact that he was hurt more than they let on heading into the series, and the fact that he did an up-down pitching the 8th, coming back in for the 9th. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Bryson Stott in the 8th for forcing the walk and kind of forcing the Cardinals to go to him because the tying run came to the plate. And even though the Phillies didn't do anything in the 8th, it kind of set up the 9th in a way. So a lot of nice situational hitting in the 9th, especially Segura. It's good to see him, longest active player without making the playoffs. And then his first ever playoff game pretty much has the game-winning hit. As far as the bullpen goes, Eflin closed both games. They weren't clean innings by any stretch. They were both nerve-wracking innings. Tying run came to the plate. Actually, the winning run came to the plate in game 2, but in both games. So it wasn't exactly clean. The bullpen, it was very short. It was Alvarado, Robertson, Dominguez, Eflin. I think, anything else they're not really that comfortable with. I get it, but they're going to have to expand the bullpen a little more in this series against the Braves, especially because it's a best out of 5, not a best out of 3. So, you got to win 3 games, not 2. You can afford to, you don't want to lose a game, but you can afford it a lot more than in a 3-game series. So job well done. I thought we both had a lot of confidence in them heading into this, and, it paid off. I think we were both pretty spot on with what we thought was going to happen. The Cardinals, that lineup was all Goldschmidt and Arenado, and everyone else was just kind of there. The whole pool host thing, whatever was going on there, he looked like his old self in this round. And Molina's not very good, and the rest of the guys on that team just seem like defensive players that run fast. Not that much about that lineup scares you if you just find a way to work around Arenado and Goldschmidt, and for the most part, the Phillies did. I know it looked like Arenado had one about 15 rows deep in game 1, and the wind knocked that down, and realistically, that won the Phillies the game, I guess. But that's going to happen. It happened for both teams, but it was just really cool to see them not even just get back in the playoffs, win a playoff series too. That was awesome. And then Mundo Sosa making the last out after the Cardinals traded him in their ballpark was great. That was great too. So, the Phillies get some revenge for 2011 because, as we know, they were never really the same after that. Howard with the injuries, Utley with the injuries, Rollins aged, Cliff Lee aged, Halladay aged, plus injuries. So, that was the last time the Phillies made the playoffs. And now the Cardinals with Molina, Wainwright, and Pujols moving on, most likely Wainwright. And Arenado has an opt-out, I believe, but I don't know. I don't think he'll do anything with that. We'll see. So could have been the end of it for the Cardinals too. So, a little nice to get some revenge there. Now moving on to Atlanta. This is going to be tough. I think everybody knows that. Atlanta is one of the deeper rosters in baseball, behind maybe just the Dodgers and possibly Houston. I mean, they're deep at everything. Lineup goes 7-8 deep. Rotation goes 4 guys you trust. Bullpen has 4 or 5 guys they trust. They're a tough team, and they've been there, done that team. They've won the division 5 years in a row now, and they won the World Series last year. They know what they're doing, and the Phillies are still a relatively inexperienced team going up against a very experienced team. That Cardinals team, for how old it wasn't maybe as experienced as we thought outside of Molina, because Wainwright didn't pitch. So Bullhouse and Molina are really the 2 most experienced guys there, and they're way past their prime to really do anything. That's not really the case here in Atlanta. A lot of the core guys were here last year, and they're still young, and they're in the middle of their careers. Like Dansby, Swanson, and Acuna wasn't in the playoff run last year's back in. Olsen, despite coming from the A's had some playoff runs when Olsen was there, and Riley's a year older and looks like he could possibly win MVP this year. So this team is built differently than most, and they showed it when they took the division from the Mets at the end of the season. So they are among the hardest possible draws you could have, but that's the playoffs. And the Phillies, outside of the last 7 times they played on, the Phillies more or less looked like they were about to give away the playoff spot. The Phillies played the Braves tough for most of the year, except for that end there where they went 2-5 against them in those last 7. Before that, I think they were 6-6 against them. So, we'll see. The Phillies will throw Suarez in game 1 and then go back to Wheeler and Nola. I'm really, really curious to see what they do in a game 4. I would go with Falter. I don't trust Gibson at all. I'm shocked he made the playoff roster, but it doesn't really matter because if he's pitching, or if Nick Nelson was pitching, that means that game is over anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. Syndergaard just pitches to contact too much, and sometimes it's hard contact. It's hard to trust him, especially against a team as powerful as the Braves. So I think they go to Falter. I don't think he exactly has the same leash that Wheeler and Nola do. If you get 4 out of them, I think you're happy, and then you try to maybe manage a bullpen game with some Bellotti and Brogdon mixed in there to get to the 6th or 7th. So that'll be interesting, but it comes down to a lot of these Phillies hitters have decent numbers against some guys on the Braves. Harper had his 2 longest home runs of the year, I think, came against these Braves bullpen guys, Jansen and Iglesias. So, that's good to see. Realmuto has a couple home runs off of Kyle Wright, who's expected to be the Braves game 2 starter. So, that's another thing. A lot of these guys have decent numbers just because they see them so much, and that's going to happen, especially the Phillies have decent numbers against Morton. So he's supposed to pitch game 3, I think, which will be the first game in Philadelphia, which will be against Nola. So, for the Phillies, it's just try to find a way to win 1 game in Atlanta. That's tough. Atlanta's a tough place to play, especially in the playoffs. It's a very hostile place, and the Braves are playing probably the best baseball of anyone in the league right now. It's probably not even close, honestly. Maybe the Dodgers, but this team is hot. But the Phillies are confident now. They've already celebrated twice, which they look like they're having fun, and that goes a long way, because we look back at some of those Phillies teams that lost in 10 and 11, and it was the team coming in was kind of the underdog fun team, just going out there, didn't care, nothing to lose really. And it was the Phillies with the 102 and 95 or whatever it was wins that had all the pressure to get back to the World Series, and they lost, they got upset. So that's kind of the role the Phillies need to take this week against the Braves. Now, I unfortunately think the season will end in this series. For other reasons I just mentioned, the Braves are just incredibly talented, incredibly deep, and the Phillies, in the lineup, they're surviving, but the contributions maybe aren't what we want them to be. Harper hit the home run in game 2, but Schwarber had 2 sac flies, didn't have a hit in the series. Hoskins, who somehow gets to stay in the 2 hole every day, was 0 for 9, I think. They need to move the lineup around a little bit. Hoskins has to get out of the 2 hole. The problem is you can't put Stott there because Schwarber and Harper are lefties. and I think he'd be one of the best guys to put there. So I think you have to put Bohm in the 2 spot. He had 2 doubles in the series against the Cardinals. Looked pretty good. His at-bats were decent. I think you have to put him in the 2 hole. Makes a lot more contact than Hoskins, who left a lot of guys on base in that series. In that 9th inning, when they had the 6-run rally, he pretty much made the only 2 outs because the other out was a sac fly, and he started the inning with an out, ended it with an out. It was, it's just his at bats don't look good right now, and we know how streaky he is, and right now he's just in a very big hole. And in the playoffs, you can't have that, especially at the top of the order. So he needs to move down. Segura, kind of like the way he's playing. Obviously, had the big hit, confident, playing good. Stott make a lot of nice at bats, making hard contact, not really looking overmatched, which is good. So we'll see. Especially, I don't even know if Stott's gonna play game 1 against the lefty Fried. They might go to Sosa at short, so that's another thing to look at. So we'll see. I think they got to move the lineup around, and then if they could just get Castellanos going a little. It's the same stuff from the season, just rolling everything over, ground balls. It doesn't look good for him either. So not exactly sure what they're going to do there. But lineup's still a little concerning. Pitching, I love the front 3. They all have decent numbers against the Braves too. They all handled them at times this season. I think if the Phillies lose, it won't be because of starting pitching, at least in the first 3 games. We'll see game 4, but when it comes down to the bullpen going to hold up, can we try? Zeppelin, if he comes in for these saves, the Cardinals' bottom half of the lineup isn't probably as good as the Braves. So, is that going to be an issue for him when he was kind of working around trouble in those first 2 games against the Cardinals? He might not be able to work around against the Braves. It could happen. Dominguez Robertson still looks shaky at times, but Dominguez dialed back, got a couple big strikeouts in game 2. Robertson had a pretty clean 8th inning in game 1. Alvarado gave up the home run in game 1, looked good in game 2. So if that's all they trust, I get it, but you probably need a little more, especially going against the Braves, who have such a balanced lineup. But we'll see. It's just the Braves are playing so well right now. I couldn't get Sean. I couldn't get hold of Sean. I asked him what his prediction would have been for this series. I'll check again, but he has not texted me yet. I'm going to take the Braves in 5. I think the Phillies do win maybe one of the first 2 in Atlanta, and then I think they win the first game in Philly, and then the concerns with who pitches game 4 kind of screws them, and the Braves take that there, and then, game 5's at home. Usually, it's going to benefit the more experienced team, the deeper team, the team that can rely on more pitchers, especially because it looks like, and we all like Ranger, but it looks like Ranger would pitch game 5, and he's never pitched in the playoffs before. I don't know how he would handle an elimination game like that. And if the Phillies are only trusting 4 guys out of the bullpen by the 5th game, it could be a problem with those guys being overworked and stuff. So I'm going to take the Braves in 5, but I don't think we can call the season a disappointment at all. The Phillies made it farther than the Mets in the playoffs. The Phillies won a playoff series, won a series against a team that everybody wanted them to beat because of the whole revenge factor I talked about. This season was a good first step, and Rob Thompson got the interim tag taken off as manager for the next 2 years now. It's a 2-year deal, so that was cool today to see. And I think that does give this team an extra added motivation heading into this series, though, that their guy's going to be there. They're playing for him, and that's something they've kind of done since he took over in early June. So I think that will give them some extra motivation. And I think they win 2 games, and I think we should be pretty happy, honestly, if this goes to game 5, because that showed a lot about this team with, the reality being that half the lineup isn't playing good at all, really. Hoskins, Castellanos, Schwarber, a little shaky. I know he had the 2 big sac flies. Marsh, okay, yeah, not playing bad, but it's like too many of the big bats just aren't playing good to have total confidence in this team against a way more competent Braves team than the Cardinals were. And that's what I think this comes down to, really. But other than that, I think the Phillies, have a chance in this series just because of how tough they played the Braves. But there's just a lot going in the Braves' favor, especially with the Phillies already having to play 2 games and the Braves pretty rested with a rested rotation, rested bullpen with guys that are good. So, that's how it's going to be. And it looks like they might get Spencer Strider back, whether he starts Where's a weapon on the bullpen for them too? I don't know, but either way, that's gonna be tough for the Phillies. They struggle with him at times this year, so that's another difficulty. So I got the Braves in 5. I don't know what Sean has. If he gets back to me, I'll put it in the description on YouTube and the podcast. But if not, I'm sure he'll say the Phillies are going to win. I don't know. He probably has the Phillies in 4 or 5. I don't blame him. I've gone on the side of caution. Maybe I don't think it's disappointing if they lose it all. I really don't. This was a first good step, and hopefully they build a better team for next year too, and that this run and this playoff experience works in their favor. Like we talked about after they clinched the postseason berth, Middleton getting this taste of the playoffs again is only going to want to make him spend more and do more to make the team good. And then winning a playoff series, and then the way I'm projecting it, where they lose kind of in a heartbreaking fashion in this series, he's going to even be more motivated. And I think, maybe this isn't the year for the Phillies. I think we can all agree on that the Dodgers and the Braves are way more talented rosters, although the Phillies had a winning record against the Dodgers. And, Houston on the other side and the Yankees. The Phillies realistically might still be the 5th, 6th, 7th most talented team left in these playoffs, but that's okay. This was the first good step. This feels like 07. If this is 07, I think we'll all take that. So that's where I'm at. Braves in 5, but I think it'll be close. I do. And I'm obviously rooting very hard for the Phillies to win this. It'd be really cool to see them go the farthest out of any team in the division this year after, all the crap they kind of got from Mets and Braves fans for kind of a lackluster season at times. But this will be a first good step, I think, for what, as Sean says, this will be the worst Phillies team in 10 years. And if that's the case, this is awesome that, the worst team in 10 years, the next 10 years, is going to take the defending champs to an elimination game in the second round of the playoffs. So that's where I'm at. I guess we'll talk next time, maybe whatever Sean wants to do, maybe halfway through the series, depending how it's going, maybe after the series. We'll see. Game 1 tomorrow at 1. Your Phillies getting screwed with these times, kind of. Game 1 at 1, and then I think Game 2 is at like 4:35 or something. So not the greatest times if you have to work or you're trying to sit back and drink some beer for this game, but it's exciting. We're gonna have a home game over the weekend on Friday, so that's awesome. Get back into Philly, get baseball back into Philly, playoff baseball. So it's exciting. Let's go for it. Why not?